May is arguably the most important month for fine art in New York City. So there's numerous standout auctions at Christie's and Sotheby's, and then famous fairs, of course, such as Frieze. With that in mind, we wanted to check in with Sandy Kemper. He is the founder of the Collectors Fund for the American Masters Collection. It is an art ownership and investment fund with more than 110 member families, multiple businesses across the U.S. as well. Sandy, thanks for coming back. Love seeing you here on Money Moves. Now, we know your collection features some of the most recognizable 20th, 21st century American artists. What have you seen as far as demand goes? We've been talking about the fine art market really seeing lots of support. Is that how you see it?
Well, yes, and you're right. This is a big month here in New York. And if you look at the Impressionist sales that occurred last week, very big numbers, very big sell-through rates. So you saw 85% and 90% by dollar and by lot selling at the two major houses. So there's a big demand right now for art, perhaps framed by some of the macroeconomic conditions that are elsewhere, perhaps just because folks want to be invested in something beautiful.
So let's talk about some of the pieces. And I know obviously you have this fund. This is not necessarily, you're not checking off boxes as to what you purchased and what you sold, but they're good reference points for just how strong this market is. And there's one sculpture, and I think we have some visuals of Adam and Eve as far as who did them, of course, Paul Manship. You purchased it in 2007. It sold last year at this time, and you had a gain on the sale of more than 64%.
Right, and I think as you pointed out, as an indication of what's happening in the art market, it's a fairly opaque market. I mean, you do have some good transparency and discovery at auction, but a lot of sales happen away from auction. So we brought a few examples of works that we'd acquired in the collection, and it's sold. Generally, I think these are indicative of what's happening in the art market. I think we've outperformed a bit, but it's fun to be able to share these with you to show what's happening across the board and across artists from early American to later contemporary.
And there's one piece that's untitled. This is a painting, and when you talk about outperformance, I mean, this is more than a 49% return, which there are any one of hedge fund managers out there who would love to have this.
Well, this is a Frankenthaler. I don't know if you're showing that on the screen or not. And this is an artist in particular who we felt wonderfully strong about acquiring, because at the time the color fields were a little bit underperforming, a little bit out of the radar scope.
And that was back in January 2009.
Yeah, and this has been a very good asset for Stoughton. And if you look at the current auctions that are coming up in contemporary post-war, very strong showing from the color field artists like Frankenthaler.
A little bit more traditional. We have Trees in a Meadow. We're going to show that for people as well.
One of my favorite artists, Charles Birchfield. And in fact, the first work of art I ever acquired as a young man, not this one, but an artist that I followed, and this was a great work, and then something from an earlier moment in America. So this is pre-war American of the 21st century, or rather of the 20th century, and did very well for us. I think that was 85% return.
Yeah, so I mean, these numbers speak for themselves. Now, granted, also, Sandy, for what you do, you have an amazing eye. Obviously, your family has been in art for generations, so this is not for people to try at home, but it is just worth pointing out to what extent some classic pieces are holding on and gaining in value.
I think generally the art market, especially if you're going to have some diversification ability, as we do in a fund, is a good place to have investment dollars. As you know, the art comes into our members' homes, but more importantly, it's a very finite asset class or asset. They're not making any more because in many cases the artists are no longer producing. And so you have a finite, curtailed supply. You have an increasing demand typically when these artists go into the museums or into the homes of private collectors. Very rarely are they sold. So you have a very nice supply-demand dynamic that creates intrinsic value in the asset over time.
And then you get to come about these if there's a change in the family structure, or if for some reason people are just willing to let go of a piece.
Exactly. It is, as we said, an inefficient market. So we referenced the $1 billion in sales likely to happen just this week in New York. It's about a $40 to $50 billion a year turnover market, but it's a fairly inefficient market. So the art itself is sold with a fairly high frictional cost for those transactions, not like gold or even real estate, and yet the investment fundamentals are not dissimilar. So buying away from that frictional cost, finding the art before it gets to gallery, before it gets to auction, from our network of curators is one of the ways that we like to acquire the asset.
And Sandy, this art rotation program that's part of your fund actually lets people have these, if they're members, on their walls.
So it also helps us reduce storage costs. So the art is in our members' homes.
At one point told me that insurance is not even that big of a deal, which really surprised me because you said the people that have these works are really serious about looking after them.
Well, right, and if you think about the insurance, and we work with a great company called AXA, who does a wonderful job managing the art insurance for us, but because the art is in very diverse geographies, our cost to insure is less than it would be if all the art was in one museum.
All right, Sandy, great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Sandy Kemper, founder and chairman of the Collectors Fund.